Welcome back to another episode of Design Deconstructed. This is episode 10. If you're wondering about the gap, it's because I did episode 9 as a live stream on my Twitch channel. That was not as successful as I would like it to be. I will say deconstructing something live where I don't have the ability to go in after the fact and edit a recording is a bit problematic. I will try it again, perhaps when I have a little bit more seasoning under my belt with this whole recording myself nonsense, but yeah, I'm still getting used to everything, so please bear with me. There's going to be some weird fits and starts. That's also explains why I've been off for a little while and not recording. Personal issues have cropped up as well. I've announced on my Twitter that my wife and I are separating. We're in the midst of doing all of that. It's a lot to have to deal with, and it certainly makes recording some of these episodes more problematic than they can be otherwise. So yeah, anyway, this is episode 10. I'm going to be taking a look at a really deep dive into Festival of the Four Winds for this episode. It's an annual event that runs in Guild Wars 2. It was restarted in 2018 after about 4 years off, I think. It was 2014, I believe, the last time that it was live in the game prior to last year. This was an interesting project where I was tasked with reviving it from where it had been left off, and we hadn't really done that festival with the intention of it being a recurring annual thing. It was done 2 times prior, so there was some precedent for it coming back, but there wasn't a long-term plan for it. And so it was up to me to sort of take ownership over it and resurrect it from where it had been left off and try to bring it up to current standards of scripting, current standards of storytelling, and making sure that it was something that could be run year after year and still be a fun place for players to enjoy their experience of Tyria. So the theme of the episode, or the release, is one of, I guess you would call it, solidarity, coming together. And you know, the idea is that the Zephyrites, this festival is centered around an area of the world called Labyrinthine Cliffs, and specifically about this tribe of nomadic traders called the Zephyrites. We first met them in Tyria years ago. They helped us with securing Orion's egg, and since then they have been kind of in the background helping us along the journey of, you know, safeguarding Orion and trying to balance the magic of Tyria. They are a race of humans. I mean, they're not a race of humans. They are humans that is specialized in air magic, and so they have learned to sort of take air elementalism and break it down into constituent parts. So you have those who have practiced at using sun energy, photonic energy. Then you have those who use the wind and can ride the wind. And then you have those who are specialized in using lightning and electrical energy. And so all of this is stemming from sort of a deeper deconstruction, if you will, of air magic in the game. And so we had initially done that because it allowed us to have these really cool movement abilities that were initially unique to this map, and then they spread out to other areas like Drytop. But yeah, so we are returning to this area, and we wanted to kind of pick up the story of the Zephyrites, because the last we had heard from them in the game, they'd crash landed in Drytop and had kind of been stranded there. They helped us with the main narrative of Season 2 at that point, but then we hadn't really heard from them since. So this was an attempt to also kind of put closure on their storyline a little bit, because they were a pretty big part of the Season 2 storyline, and they didn't have a good, satisfying conclusion, in my opinion. So this was an attempt to do that, as well as just create an event around the process of, all the different groups coming together and realizing that we are stronger together than we are apart, and that we have much more in common than we have things that divide us. And I thought it was an important message, particularly given current events in the world right now, for us to put out there in the game. So yeah, that's what it was. And then on a personal note, for me, resurrecting this was also a very personal journey. In 2017, I lost my father. I had lost my mom back in 2004, so I had already lost one parent, and losing my second parent was a challenge. I will admit, it put me into a very dark place, depression-wise. I had a lot of struggles. I love my parents. They were a touchstone for me in many, many aspects of my life. I had a very close relationship with both of them. And so this was being developed about 6 months after my dad died. And it was a challenge for me to try to find that core of the message, the theme of coming together and healing and moving on and being together, because I was struggling with that in my personal life. But it ended up being a very cathartic and very wonderful experience to work on this, because I was able to channel a lot of that into the festival, and I think that it comes through on some level. I've heard from players and fans who have played the content that that is one of the things that they pick up on, is that there is this very warm feeling that they get from the area, and it isn't just nostalgia. I hope that some of the things that I tried to do in this release are, things that I needed to do personally for my own healing. And I think that the hope is that they translate through to the end user. So I don't want to toot my own horn too much on it, because I don't know for sure how well it worked. But I definitely feel like this was certainly my attempt to work through some of my problems and some of my issues in my own personal life by putting it in the game. And ultimately, as game developers, that is what we try to do. We try to connect to the players through the medium of the work that we build. So I'm hoping that that is something that comes through for those of you who enjoyed the festival this year, and last year as well. So yeah, I don't want to get too deep into it, because there's just lots of cool stuff to talk about while we're in game, and I'd rather show and not tell all of those things. So without further ado, I'm going to go hop into the game, and I will see you there. All right. Reload into Labyrinthine Cliffs. I will say the first thing that I did when it was assigned to me to work on this release was, oh my gosh, we are now going to this hugely vertical map, which had been built vertically because we had these movement abilities. And the ability to now have mounts in the game, especially one that flew, namely the Griffin, the other one, which I can't now think of the name of, the Dragon mount, had not been put into the game yet. It was still very much early in development when I was working on this. So I knew that it was coming, but I had no inclination of how that mount would work in this area. From what I have seen, it makes some of the content really even more trivial, particularly the treasure hunt that runs in this area. As you can see, the sky scale, that's the name, sky scale. This sky scale is just hovering here, and the treasure hunt's going to begin in 5 minutes, so you'll be able to see that, how ridiculously easy it can be on the sky scale to get these treasure loot bags that appear, because I definitely put those in a configuration that make the sky scale very advantageous, I will say, based on the way it moves. and the fact that it can just hover in place and go straight up and down in a line. Yeah, there's plenty of those kinds of loot bag things that I think make using the sky scale really uh, a better option for this map. Anyway, what I was saying is that the first thing, yeah, was that I examined was how will the mounts play in this map, and I was very fortunate to have my immediate suspicions confirmed that the mounts played exceptionally well in this map because of its verticality. In particular, Griffin had some really great moments. That was the first thing I tried, was getting on the Griffin, going up to the very top of the cliff, and diving off, and getting the ability to like race around in large, fast circles. It was just so much fun. So I was really thrilled that you know, this map didn't require much in the way of updating, because that's one of the things that you worry about is, you know, when you go back to an older map that had been designed when we had no idea um, that we were going to do mounts at this point in time, that, you know, there's always a concern that, oh, mounts are going to break this map because you can now get outside the map or you can do things. But because of the way that this had been built for the aspect skills, which were these, you know, being able to super jump like this, pick up these crystals, and you get these one of three different sort of movement powers. And so the wind one is assisted leap, that lets you jump real high. So because you could jump real high and you could zip around with a sun dash and use the lightning to kind of self-direct your own trajectory through a jump, you know, it was already sort of at least prepped, I will say, for the abilities that mounts possess. Because mounts, in a lot of ways, mounts are variations of the aspect skills in a strange kind of way. I mean, I don't think they were designed that way. I don't think the mounts team sat down and were like, hey, remember those aspect skills? Let's make mounts that enhance that. But like Raptor is obviously, you know, a faster maneuvering, which is what the Raptor is. And the wind jump and the lightning tether are both sort of tied in a way to both the jackal in some senses, and the gosh, I'm blanking on all the names of the mounts. It's been way too long since I played this. I apologize. The Springer. I was going to say Bunny, and I'm like, no, that's the internal name. We called it Bunny for forever, and then I had to get my head wrapped around, no, we don't call it the Bunny mount, because it wasn't a bunny. It, you know, ultimately, I mean, that's, yes, what shipped was a bunny, but we had already planned for many variations on non-bunny skins, so it wasn't supposed to be just a bunny. It was supposed to be a Springer, which meant any springing kind of creature specifically. All right. Yeah, so I'm just wandering around here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the map too. The map design, we didn't do a whole lot from the standpoint of changes to the layout of the map. The map was pretty solid as it was. There were some key things that we did do on the map side, which was obviously an aesthetic pass. A lot of the textures had to be brought up to speed. They were up-resed, and, you know, I'm pretty sure they added a bunch of this, you know, kind of extra level of detail to the terrain, now that they had a lot more sort of tools in their toolbox on the map side. One of the areas that changed most from an aesthetic point was the underwater areas. If we go down here, these used to be just pretty barren. There was some rocks down here and a little bit of seaweed, but, you know, Carson Marlowe, who was the map artist who was assigned to this to work on it with me, really did take it to the extra level, and just, you know, it was based on an offhand comment where I said, you know, I'm going to put some content down here, some Easter egg content, in the underwater areas, and it's a little bit bland. I said, you don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but anything you could do to make it sexier would be great. And he he took that and really, really ran with it, because now it looks so gorgeous in here underwater. One of the Easter eggs here is one of that since I'm here, I'm gonna take a look at. This is sad, poor, deceased Quaggan. I put him here as a little Easter egg. It's just this fun little thing to do. There's no reward for it. It's just purely narrative design. This poor Quaggan was in this ship, and I don't know what happened to this ship, but it looks like it was probably destroyed, and he died on the ship and ended up trapped here with this artifact. And if you notice, if you get close to it, you get this faint radiance, and it lasts for a short amount of time. And you basically have to take this faint radiance and carry it across to more of these objects. And when you do one, then it transfers here, and then if you go up to it again, you get another faint radiance, and then you have to find the next one in the chain. And so you're basically carrying the Quaggan's light, if you will, from circle to circle. I don't know what you call these underwater lanterns. I don't know. There's some kind of Quaggan architecture. So I put in a little string of these things, and I can't find them anymore. I'd have to go probably search and scour on the wiki to find out where all these things are. I tried to make it so that you could see the next one. Oh, there it is. It's over there. I tried to make it so that wherever you were from the one that you were at, you could see the next one in the sequence, so that you could kind of breadcrumb your way through pretty easily if you were observant. There's the next one. I'm not going to do that, but basically I put them in a line all through the underwater area. And it goes all the way around to the other side of the map, which is right about here. You have to follow it all the way through the water. You get to about here, and then there's a Quaggan's hut where he just kind of, that's his home, and he was trying to get home, and he didn't quite make it. And it's a sad, sad story. Quaggan often have sad side stories, is what I guess I'm trying to say. They're always in these tragic situations. Yeah. Anyway, you can lead his light home, and then when you do that, a little surprise will happen. I won't spoil it if you didn't see it last year. I don't want to completely ruin the surprise. But again, there is no reward for doing it other than you get a neat little story moment that happens. I like putting little things like that into the world. It helps it, I think, make the world feel alive, and that there is more than just the main story and the secondary story and the tertiary story. Even I'm not even sure this qualifies as a tertiary story. It's more like a sort of ambient thing that just kind of is there, and totally up to players to find it. All right, I'm going to wander around here, and I'm going to wait in this area because the treasure hunt, which originally or the first event runs through the bottom floor of the main bazaar area, and then the second part comes up through here. So I'm going to wait out around here for the event to pop up. Let me get on my skimmer, because the skimmer is the far superior mount for most of this second section of the event, because so many of these things are at skimmer level. It's deliberately designed that way. I wanted players to get on their skimmer here and take a little trip through. And now you see my gosh, all these crazy flying mounts. Yeah, so the treasure hunt here was lifted almost line by line, code-wise, script-wise, from the Casino Blitz event in Amnoon, which was designed by our amazing Pacifier team, open world team, Sarah Sperry and I believe Lisa I can't remember who else worked on that. But they made this awesome event in Amnoon, which this event is very much loosely based on, or maybe not even loosely, maybe very much just ripping it off. No, I mean I tried to keep the same spirit of it, which is that there are these things that you have to, you know, collect around, and in order to do so, you have to experience using the mounts. The mounts are obviously all about freedom and joy of movement, and so that's what this is. It's about using mounts in precision ways to kind of collect these items. One of the things I was a little surprised and maybe a little disappointed with from this year as opposed to last year is uh, I had a problem where I, being that this was last year was the first year we'd done this event, I had no idea how good players would be at this, and so I took a wild guess at the number of bundles that players would be able to collect. And it turns out that they obviously are far better than I could ever imagine. And so the numbers on this event, this event ended up being ridiculously easy last year, where the number of bundles collected was far exceeding the caps that I had put on these events. In part, I don't think there was anything that I could have done about it last year, because the way that these events run, uh, the maximum number of items that I could ask players to collect, this is a technical limitation, was 999, which is what the third tier asks you to collect. So if I could have changed anything about last year, I would have probably changed it to like 750, 850, and then 999, just so that it was a little bit, you know, it still would have been ridiculously easy for players to get. But this is one of those things of like, you don't really know what you're going to need. And I didn't have last year the technical support that I would have needed to get that maximum cap number changed. I was kind of hoping they would be able to revisit that for this year, but I don't know, maybe it wasn't something that the game is capable of doing to raise that number. So yeah, the number of items that players collect is going to far exceed the limits of the event, but that's fine. I mean, this was never meant to be a hard event. It wasn't like we wanted players to fail this on a regular basis or have to get the entire map going on it. In general, I think the general rule of this is that it should succeed probably 7 or 8 times out of 10. And the only way it would fail is if there's really absolutely nobody on the map. Because I think an individual player, if they're really working hard, can get between 60 and 70 bags of loot by themselves. And so to get the full cap, you'd have to do that. You'd have to have at least 10 players on this map by the end. So it does require some amount of team play. It's not it, which is why it's marked as a group event. But yeah, ultimately it definitely skews more on the easy side, and I'm fine with that, because again, this is a festival. It's not meant to be hard content. It's purely about having fun. It's about moving around on mounts, and hopefully players will enjoy just the process of doing that. All right, so then when this event ends, it rolls up and goes to the top of the, or from the bottom to the top, I should say, of the festival grounds. So we'll head over there. I like playing through this event. It's one of those things that, again, the reason that I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this was because I had to build this entire map and redo this entire map from scratch, in a way. Not scratch, because there was a bunch of stuff in the map already, obviously, but in terms of like the content, there was everything to do, because I had to revisit every NPC, update them in their temporal, sort of setting, because it had been, 4 years of real time that had passed, and so there was a lot to have to contend with outside of each individual piece. So I couldn't spend a lot of time on each individual piece. I had to kind of budget my time wisely, and so I built this event using a template. And the fun part of this was that enabled me to then focus a lot more just on the placement of these bundles and making sure that it was a fun experience, and that there was lots of variety of things. And I suck. Oops. All right, I'm going to go to the top of the bazaar and work my way back from the other side, which is a sound strategy if you are interested in trying that. A lot of people, I think, start at the bottom and work their way up, but I actually think that in some ways starting at the top and working your way down is better, because dropping, you have more options, because you can glide, you can just drop if you're not interested in taking, or if you have things that offset fall damage, and etc., etc. There is so much stuff in this festival that I that I put a lot of love into. I really, like I said, the intro. I hope that it shows. I wrote a bunch of new dialogues. I have a bunch of new NPCs with non-VO text conversations. All of them were updated so that, if you had played 4 years ago, you could run into the same NPCs, but they would be different. I tried to get, attention to detail, like even some of these NPCs. This is one that I think is a bit of a gaffe, actually, now that I think about it. I'm pretty sure Morning was one of the Zephyrites who died in Dry Top. I'm not entirely sure. I think that might be the case, in which case this would not be the same Morning. Zephyrites have interesting names, and I always think of them as they're not their given names. They're not the names they're born with. They're names that they adopt. I think of the Zephyrites as being kind of a people that have two names, right? Like they have their birth name, which they often don't go by, but then they also have their Zephyrite name, which is what their community calls them. And I think it's based on their personality. Meadow over here is, I always saw her as sort of the hippie. I mean, they're all hippies. Let's be honest, Zephyrites are hippie culture. But Meadow is definitely the hippiest of the hippies. She's my tribute to the fact that I go barefoot everywhere. I wanted to have a barefoot character in here, so that's Meadow. Yeah, there's a bunch of these NPCs around. Oh, Turn. That's what I was going to talk about. So Turn was an NPC who was here before, but she was a little girl before. And so since it's been 4 years, she's now a young woman. She's a teenager. And so I spent time making a new composite for her based on her old composite. But I did some interesting bone scaling, which is a technique that we have that we didn't have 4 years ago as well. That enabled me to basically take a human and sort of shrink the bones down just a bit and give her slightly different proportions so that she looks like she's more like 14 to 16 years old. And she's still here. This is where she was standing before, but she's still guiding people through the festival. She has interesting things to say. But again, I tried to give that level of attention to detail to everything that I did in this festival when I revived it, because again, this place has a very special place in my heart, and so I wanted to make sure that it had the love and the attention. All right, so now we've completed the treasure hunt successfully. We did all the tiers, and so it unlocked a bonus event. This bonus event, like the one in Amnoon, is pretty much straight line-by-line code transplant of the Choya Pinata event in Ambient, with a significant difference, which is you have to use water balloons and only water balloons to put out its fire. So Wozmak summons this fire elemental, or effigy rather, and players have to douse it with enough water balloons that it puts this fire out. It's a little bit silly, goofy, fun, but I mean that's what this festival is supposed to be about, right? It's a summer festival, so why not have a big water balloon event? I initially tried a bunch of different things here. I tried making the water balloons hit players. That was super annoying. I mean, it was fun to have a water balloon fight in the middle of this event, but it meant that players could grief each other, which really is never very fun. And then the other thing that it caused problems with is that players who were not interested in hitting each other were hitting each other just because there were so many players around the feet of this thing that it's unavoidable that you hit other players. And so then basically, you know, it would mean it would be really difficult for you to actually participate in this event. Whoa, what is he doing? Oh my gosh. Is that new? I don't remember that happening last year. That's not a good look for him. Yeah, I wonder if he's obviously trying to pathfind his way through here. And it looked like it got hung up and started twisting around and pivoting on his axis. There we go. So we put him out. We succeed and get the bonus event. And you get extra festival tokens, which you can then spend down at the festival vendor for fun and prizes. Alright, but I'm not going to do that because I have all the awards and it wouldn't really be worthwhile. I will say I can show you one of the things I think I have. Oh, no, that's the Choya. What do I have? There we go. So you get one of these kites that you can run around with, and you can mount up and have the kite on your mount while you're going, which is fun. One of those neat little things that was something the systems design folks that were working on this with me made sure that we could do, because we had these kites in 4 years ago, but they were built in a way that you would not be able to use them with mounts, because I think they were a transform of some kind. And just for technical sake, mounts are technically a transformation. That's what they register as in our game, in our engine. So anything that is also registered as a transformation would not be able to be used at the same time. Which is one of the things that the aspect skills, these crystals that you interact with to get the movement abilities, these also started off as transformations, and so they were not able to be used with mounts. And one of the things that I changed about this content last year was to make them into bundle items instead, because you can use mounts with those. And so what it does is it stores the bundle when you mount, and then when you unmount it restores the bundle, and so you have the lightning pull. So you can mount up and down and use these things interchangeably. It's one of the things that, you know, you don't think about. Again, we didn't have mounts 4 years ago, so there was no need to build them in a particular way. And so when we got into this map, I realized, oh, we're going to have to make players choose between using the aspect skills and the mounts. That's no fun at all. And so I went to work immediately on converting those over to something that could be friendly with mounts, and it makes all the difference in the world, I think, to be able to have the ability to do both simultaneously and store up all of your aspect skills, mount, go somewhere, unmount, and then use your aspect skills. It's a no-brainer. It's something that I think even if we didn't have, I would have requested the ability to do that. Luckily, you know, we had the technology already in place to be able to do bundles interchangeably with mounts, so it didn't require any extra code, just a lot of design work on my end to re-implement that. So yeah, as you can see, I'm just going to wander around now. There is lots of, so that's the lightning tether. There's lots of cool stuff already in this map that was designed for these aspect skills, but then when you combine them with mounts, it's just so much stronger to be able to maneuver around and interchangeably hop from one to the next, and literally in some cases hop, haha. I already have the achievements on this stuff, so this is one of the downsides. I can't show you some of the content because I already did it on this account, and I don't have another account that I can play on right now. So bear with me. I will attempt to show you kind of where they were. So there are these crystals that are sort of sprinkled around it, hard to get to places. I thought there was one up here. Maybe not. Look at me. You'd think I would know this map like the back of my hand, but I guess it has been a year, so. Yeah, anyway, you've probably seen... Oh, here's one. You've seen these crystals. They're kind of spread around throughout the level. They normally appear like a big kind of floaty active crystal, and when you collect it, you sort of take the energy from it, and then it becomes this sort of quiet crystal. And it's just a scavenger hunt, and you used to be forced to use the aspect skills to gather these up, and now you can easily gather them using the mounts or some combination of the two. And so there's all kinds of good stuff. It was meant to try to get you to explore all the different corners and nooks and crannies of the map, and it's pretty successful, I think, at what it does. That was not designed by me. That was designed by Lena Rain, who was one of the original designers on this with me years ago. So there's all kinds of good stuff that both the aspect skills. Sometimes mounts just are far superior, though. Mounts certainly make some of this content much easier than it was when all you had were aspect skills. Having said that, one of the key things that I also made sure to address is that all of this stuff needed to be still usable. Oh, that was weird. Why did that NPC die? Huh. That's very odd. Oh, maybe that was a Black Lion merchant. Yeah, so I made sure that even if you don't have mounts, there are rental mounts throughout the level, but even if you didn't want to use them or didn't want to pay for the use of the mounts, you can get to all of the content using the aspect skills. It's harder because the aspect skills are not nearly as intuitive to use. They require some very tricky positioning of like those sorts of ground targeting decals, or very good timing to get the right angle when you're doing wind jumps and that kind of thing. But it should still be possible to get everything in this release with the aspect skills alone. Another thing that we got that was new for this was being able to sit down. I know, not terribly exciting, but the fact that we have sitting in the game is still something I vastly appreciate. One of the ways in which I used it in an innovative way, since sitting had been in the game for a little while when this festival came out and wasn't like in and of itself particularly new, I did try this craziness over here. So I put sittable chairs on this moving platform, which we had never thought to do before because we don't use moving platforms a lot. The technology is not the best technology we have in the game. Our engine supports it, but it supports it in maybe not the best way. So I put chairs on here because I thought, well, hey, I mean, if we're going to put this boat out here that players can tour around on, why not be able to sit down on it and enjoy a nice leisurely cruise around the bay. This is, again, purely a tourist thing to do. It's free, so you don't have to worry about it not living up to expectations. You get what you pay for. Um, I just thought it was a fun thing to have, and it does move very slowly when it's docking. There's nothing I can really do about that, so I tried to make sure that it doesn't stay docked for long, and it just goes on this nice little loop. It goes, let's see, it goes up around here, loops around, goes all the way over here, loops back around, and it makes this long circuitous route of the entire bay. Um, it's just a fun thing for players to do, I guess, or relaxing thing, I should say, for players to do. I don't know about fun. To each their own. I find it fun, but yeah, somebody might not. There's still quartz, lots of quartz. I know people have probably enjoyed. I'll pop into the map. They've enjoyed seeing a source of quartz come back because I think the only place you could get it after this event went away was in the home instance if you had the node there, I believe. I'm not sure. Cardin is one of the returning characters. He was somewhere in the festival before, and now he's out here basically being, I don't know, he set aside his prior life as a thief, I think, and now he's definitely embraced the hippie life. He stands out here fishing, probably for the village, but also for himself. It's little things like that I really appreciate the ability to work on stuff like that. It's totally not important, but I like telling little stories like that. I put in this changing booth so that if you want, you can transform into a swimsuit. It is a summer event, so obviously you want to be able to go swimming or skinny dipping, as the case may be, because this is the Tyrian version of being naked. You don't really actually get to be naked in our game because it's a T for teen game, and Lord help us if people are actually worried about kids seeing naked bodies. Oh no. Sorry, I have personal feels on that, which if you follow my Twitter, you probably are aware of. Anyway, I'm not going to get bogged down in that. I put this little beach band out here, so they're a group of musicians that during the day they kind of hang out and commiserate here and drink and have fun and enjoy the shade while these people are sunbathing on these blankets. You can lie down and sleep with them. Phrasing. Sleep next to them, rather. And then when the map goes into its night cycle, these folks turn into a live band and they start performing, and all the tourists get up and jam out and rock out, and you can join their dance party. These torches come on. Again, little attention to detail things that I like to do. Here's another tourist hero from Tyria. Yeah, it's just one of those things. These Quaggins that you see running around, they are the Quaggin rescue crew. They're not really needed anymore, but their intention, and they will still do this if it happens to you, if people fall from way up high, which they used to a lot because there was... in the original version of this event, there was the Zephyrite's mothership, which was docked up here instead of the Lion's Arch airship, and there were a bunch of those scavenger hunt items put on all of the different surfaces up there, and it was very dangerous. You had to do this sort of jumping puzzle up there, and it was very easy to fall down, and this was before there was gliding, before there was mounts, and so you would just plummet straight down into your death unless you happened to hit deep enough water to survive. And if you didn't, these Quaggin are basically running around, and if you are splatted on the ground, they will run over and revive you. That's their whole job. That's what they do. There are, I think, 9 of them, or maybe 12. They're somewhere in that neighborhood, between 9 and 12 of them. They're all on a grid. They all patrol a specific quadrant of the lower map, and their job as they're running around is they're just constantly polling for dead players. And when they find a dead player, they rush over and revive them. And so that's what they are doing. They're the Quaggan rescue crew. Now it just looks like they're kind of enjoying themselves, running around like little kids, which is why I changed them to Quaggan hatchlings in a lot of cases. But yeah, that's their job. All right. One of the other things we added for this festival returning was mount races, and now this year is new. You can do time trials of these races as adventures, and so you can test out. Oops, that's not going to get me very far because this is the skimmer race. Oh, they have new. Oh, that's cool. They've got the new art for the checkpoints, which is really so much better than the original two green flags, which was hard to see, I will say. Yeah, so this event runs every couple hours, but you can get good at it by doing the time trial and seeing how fast you can get through the race. The time trial looks like it does not have the sharks that jump out of the water at you. I don't know, maybe they took those out for this year. Or I guess the time trial might not be appropriate to see those sharks. Yeah, I put sharks that jump out of the water. That was a thing that I pulled from a race that was in one of the Living World Season 4 maps, I believe. 3 or 4, I can't remember. Where you were at the Olmacon village and you raced around their village, and there were sharks that jumped out of the water at you. I always thought that was funny, so I wanted to put them here as well because it made sense because there's sharks in these waters as well. So yeah, this just kind of loops around through the bottom area. Skimmer is always so slow on land now for me. I wish there were water everywhere when I'm on my skimmer. So yeah, again, we just tried to maximize the mounts that made the most sense for us to have in this map. Yay, faster than 4 winds. Some of them are better than others. Obviously, Raptor is probably the least useful in this map because there aren't a lot of straightaways where it can get a lot of speed. Griffin is great. The Sky Scale, I'm sure, is fantastic. Springers are pretty darn good because they can get you up on a lot of these cliffs real quick. And obviously the Skimmer. The Jackal is probably sorry. Raptor is not the least useful. It's Jackal because there's no portals here. Yeah, that's one of the things that in hindsight I kind of wish I'd added a couple portals. Just to have, so that they would have something to do to get to some easier to reach places. Especially for some of the scavenger hunt things, it would have been a neat little thing. I ended up back here because I wanted to show off this little... this is pure narrative design. I have this giant, I don't know, I had this little alcove and I was like, there's nothing back here. I want to add something. So I had this little story vignette that plays out. So this giant back here this is where he lives and he hangs out and he doesn't really have much to do. She kind of looks and stares at the waterfall and thinks. I like the idea that he's a philosopher and he is working up a masterful thesis that he will then talk about. But he's also a farmer who grows his own food because, he is a giant. He needs lots of food. And so he has planted these crops, which are his food source. He also has a pet devourer. And his pet devourer is sometimes naughty. I don't know if I can wait long enough. He will do his thing or not. I won't wait too long because it's not really strictly worth it. I'll see if I can get him to do it. Yeah, but as I'm waiting for him, I'll just talk through, like, these are the sorts of things that you know, as a designer, I can put in without any real dependencies on anyone else, right? Like, there is no need for text here, so I don't have to involve the writer. There's no need for animations here because we have all the stuff that we need on these rigs already. There's no need for anything from anyone outside of myself. And so when I have the opportunity to do these little things that are just purely 100% me just doing something because I enjoy doing them, uh, those are the kinds of things I love adding to the world. Because again, I think it helps make the world feel alive. That there's not just this empty corner of the world. That there's something in it. And no, there's not much, right? Like a lot of players, as you can see, there's apparently enough of a cooldown on this that there's enough of a timer on this that it really isn't something that you can see play out if you just happen to wander in here. But there is a bit of a visual storytelling gag, even if you don't see it play out. Um, it's just one of those things that, you know, I think helps bring immersion to the world because it makes people think, oh, cool, there's this giant. He's back here and he's got a pet devourer. And, you know, you don't need to see him do his little shenanigans, which it looks like it's probably going to be too long to wait and show it to you. But there's enough there that you can kind of piece together a bit of a story, a bit of his story. Anyway, yeah, I'm not going to wait. So basically what happens is that eventually the giant devourer gets hungry, and he runs over here and he devours all of this, because he's a devourer. Ha ha ha. See what I did there? He devours all of the giant's vegetables. And the giant comes over here and he tries to, you know, uh, tend his crops, and he realizes that they are gone. And so he goes over and he yells at his giant devourer, and his giant devourer kind of sulks a little bit. And then he goes over here and he replants his crops again, and then he goes and stares at the waterfall, and the whole cycle starts over again. You know, yeah, that's one of those things. It's a bit, you know, you have to kind of stretch believability, because it does cycle over and over and over again. But that's video gaming in a nutshell. Um, oh, I can also tell this. I think there is a secret here that I don't think we end up shipping, because I wasn't sure what we were going to do with it. But there is a character here. He's hidden. He's invisible. He's using visibility channels, but he is there. Um, I can't remember why we pulled it, but he is now missing. He was a character that I've been writing since 2012, that I've been trying to get into the game. I think it's very unlikely that he will get into the game now that I'm no longer at the company. So I'm going to go ahead and spoil his story. Basically, I wrote a Norn necromancer. I can't remember his name now. It's not Ogden, but it's something like Ogden. Jeez. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Um, I have a whole design document for him. But basically the idea is that he's a Norn necromancer who was a member of the Pact, who was on the ships that went down when Morgemoth rose. So he was in Traherne's fleet on one of the flagships that got knocked out of the sky. And he ended up being terribly wounded, burned, horribly burned. He has lots of scars. His whole face is basically a patchwork of burnt, skin. He survived, but he was one of the ones who was pretty badly, not just hurt and injured, but burned in both a literal sense and a figurative sense by the commander's actions and Traherne's actions. And he is extremely angry at the Pact, and he is very much targeting the commander, was going to be targeting the commander as the sort of fulcrum point of their rage, because he blames the commander for not helping in the way that he believed that the commander should have helped. Because think about it, when the commander goes to the Maguma jungle, they don't really help the Pact a whole lot. They, you know, yes, they participate in events in the open world, but their main mission there is to go after Mortamoth. That's their role. And the commander definitely has a justification for what they are doing, specifically that, they have a much larger, more important mission than just there to help the Pact. But if you're an average Pact soldier, that doesn't really matter. Like, they are still viewing you as their commander, even if you are not super officially with the Pact anymore. You're still, you're still there, and you're healthy, and you can help them. And this Norn believes that you should have helped them and helped organize them after the defeat at the hands of Mordramoth, and you don't. You go off to go kill Mordramoth and rescue your friends. He does not have that as a legitimate motivation. He sees that you are doing this. Oops, sorry, I'm talking and trying to maneuver at the same time, and I'm losing both train of thought and dexterity. Let me start again. Yeah, basically he's pissed at the commander because he believes the commander could have done more, should have done more for them in the Maguma jungle. And I think he has a legitimate beef with that to some degree. I don't think that the commander should have done anything differently than they did, but it's certainly worth exploring. I also am jumping. The reason I was jumping on there is because I wanted to show this. This is a neat little thing that I added. Totally not the kind of thing you expect not to see in a video game, but at the same time, like, wow, okay, we've never seen this done in Guild Wars before, where we have, these are technically not moving platforms. They are, there are volumes that are above them that are pushing you back with a wind force. So I'm using the technology that we got for having wind in the game to sort of push you along and make it look as if these water wheels are turning you on the surface of it, and it works with mounts, and it's freaking awesome. Again, I'm not saying it's awesome because I'm trying to toot my own horn. I'm saying it's awesome because the people who made the wind tech are freaking badass engineers who are adding stuff to our game that our game was never really intended to have. And yeah, anyway, I was super happy that worked as well as it did. So I just wanted to show it off. Yeah, anyway. I think there's really not much more to say about this festival. I showed you the treasure hunt. I showed you the all the fun ambient stuff. I showed you the mounts playing in the map. Showed you a bunch of the new NPCs updated. Yeah. Anyway, I think I'm getting close to wrapping up here. So there's another of these, this Lion Guard Jess. He was another character who was here before. He was a young boy before, and now he's a teenage boy. He's a young man, and he's joined the Lion Guard. He actually used to hang out with this Parker Cole character over here. She is a thief, and he and Parker used to be like a tag team duo. He was an aspiring thief, and then he's since had a change of heart and has now joined the Lion Guard. And so now they're on opposite sides of the law. I always love little stories like that. So, yeah. Oh, and then there's some adventures. There's this one which is to take your mount and go gather up some scavenger hunt crystals. It's pretty much the exact same thing as a scavenger hunt, but just on a timer. And you have to use mounts, I think. There might be a way to do it with aspect skills, but I think it'd be really hard. I designed that specifically for mounts because adventures are a Path of Fire feature. So I kind of assumed that, and with the ability to rent mounts if you don't already have them unlocked on your account, it shouldn't be a problem for anyone, whether they have mounts or not. Oh, and then one last little detail. I changed a lot of the effects for the aspect skills. So now when you enter this, you get this charge that shows that you're going to go up. When you're standing inside this ring, to show that because before these were kind of, you just kind of had to know that these things were tied together and they were connected to each other. But this way you have this going up to show that you're going to jump up this way, and then this one the effect is going down to show that that's where you're going to land. So again, it's purely visual language stuff. It's basic game design mechanics. Good user experience is key. I can't say that's a perfect implementation because I did end up having to reuse effects there. I didn't have the ability to request new effects for a variety of reasons, but yeah. And then we put in this, using the book tech, we put in this, oh, that's still bugged. Whatever. We put in this book tech to have little tributes, one to Aurene and another up here to the Zephyrites. Oh, and then the other race, which I'm not going to show because I'm running out of time here. I got to head out for some errands in a minute, but this area is the finish line. There is another race which I can show maybe at another time, or maybe I'll do a let's play of this where I just enjoy playing through this and the Queen's Gauntlet. If you jump down here, there's this guy, Trader Marcus. I'll just show it. And now there's a time trial for it too, so there we go. So there's a race here that transforms you into a baby Doliac. Oh, that's interesting. I can't interact with them as a baby Doliac? Oh, weird. Alright. Yeah, so you get transformed into a baby Doliac and you have to run your way up this. It's, again, another checkpoint race up to the top of the labyrinthine cliffs. Because you're transformed here, you can't mount. You have to go get the aspect skills and use them as a baby Doliac to maneuver your way up through the festival grounds. And it's super fun because who doesn't love being a baby Doliac? And then during the actual race, there are things that will stop you, slow you down. There are these rumbling things that take place, like little tremors that knock rocks down, and the rocks can fall and hit you on the head, and it causes you to slow down or stop temporarily. So yeah, it's all good. This is just fun. Good fun. Good clean fun, as they say. So it was kind of tough with the baby Doliac to get up those jumps. Yeah, this was in 4 years ago, but it was not a race. It was an event. We didn't have. I mean, it was a race, but it was a race that was using the only races we had in the game 4 years ago were Guild Rush events, which were not designed for the kind of purpose that I was using it for. It was, Guild Rushes were deliberately designed to be multiplayer sort of event content, and yeah, it just didn't quite work. So when I brought this event back, I made sure to do it as a proper race this time. So yeah. Anyway, that's that. I think I'm going to call it there. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed my tour and deconstruction. There's less deconstruction, more just sort of behind the scenes information on this one, I think, because this content is not particularly crazy in terms of complicated mechanics or anything like that. It's very much just fun, basic, simple stuff. But there was a lot to it. Hopefully you got to see some of the sort of love and attention to detail that I put into it shows through, and hopefully you will enjoy playing through. I think this festival is going to be running through sometime in August. I don't know because I'm not part of the company anymore. It's usually a 3-week festival, I believe. So it started on the 30th. So I guess it will run through 2 weeks from last Tuesday. So yeah. Anyway, that's that. If you like my videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel on YouTube, and keep abreast of what's going on my Twitter account. And otherwise, I will see you for the next episode of Design Deconstructed. Thank you. Bye-bye.